And there we have the first problem, a ripped off fuel line. And here's where it used to connect. Okay, so the way this works here is you just take the fuel line and there's a little hole in the tank, and you insert the fuel line into the hole in the tank, and when some gas gets on the line, it swells up a little bit and kind of seals the hole off. You want to make the fuel line long enough, it'll reach the bottom of the tank and still be able to reach the carburetor. Okay guys, so after this I put the tank back on and my camera pooped out on me and didn't record it, so you'll just have to imagine me putting the tank back on. Now I'm going to be cleaning the carburetor next. Tiny little fuel pump diagram. You'll have to pull out this little tiny filter with a screwdriver. So to clean the carburetor, squirt out all the little gas holes and everything, just saturate it in carburetor cleaner and then blow it out with compressed air. The more powerful the compressed air, the better. Having already cleaned the carburetor myself off camera, I'm now going to put it back together. Okay, cleaned carburetor, fresh tank of gas. Let's see if it'll start. No. Okay, looks like it's time for the next step. Okay, so it's been about 2 weeks, I think, since I've done any work on this project, maybe 3. I actually ordered this carburetor rebuild kit here. Didn't take it that long to arrive, it's just that we've been working on tearing apart our kitchen to remodel it, so got this here carburetor repair kit. It's a Walbro, of course. I'll put the links in the description so you can get yourself one if you need it. So let's see if this will solve my problem. Alright, so before I rebuild it, I'm going to fill you in on some stuff. You might be asking me why, or perhaps shouting at the screen, why I didn't just buy a cheap kit, because this one costs $20. 20, maybe a little more dollars, including shipping and everything, but there's a very simple reason why I didn't buy the cheap kit. One of the main reasons is because this one comes with everything you need in here for a full rebuild. See those little things here? That's a Welch plug, which wouldn't come in just a quick cheap repair kit. You want to get the full rebuild kit because you won't be sure exactly what's wrong with your carburetor, unless you are sure exactly what's wrong. But if you're just experiencing anomalous problems, you won't really be knowing exactly what's wrong. You want to replace everything to be safe. You don't want to just replace one quick thing, find out that wasn't what you needed to replace the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. It's just safest, I think, to do a full rebuild on these. And $20 isn't really that bad. So, let's get started. First I'm going to do the fuel pump diaphragm here. I believe I got 4 new screws for this too, but I'm not going to use those because these ones work fine. Not even starting to strip or anything. And see, the way this fuel pump diaphragm here works, basically, is that vacuum from the engine causes it to pulse in and out like this, which causes it to suck fuel into here. And it pushes down on this, right there, which pulls up on this tiny little needle here and lets fuel into the engine. This is that Welch plug I was talking about. I'll explain those later. So, since the rebuild kit also came with all this set up here, I'm going to replace that. Gotta be careful, because if you screw this out, there's a spring under there and it will fly away. Let it off slowly. There we go. Now these can be a pain in the butt, and not can be, are. They are a pain in the butt to replace. You just have to work with it. Carefully dumping all this stuff out here, keeping it well segregated from the used parts over here. Okay, let's see. There's the lever. Comes with 2 needles. Apparently this kit works for a couple different kinds of carbs. This is the actual needle I need, I believe. I'm not sure. I'll compare it. No, apparently I need the bigger needle. One thing about these needles is this little tip here has some rubber on it. If the rubber gets old and bad, it won't work anymore. You won't really be able to tell very well. So it's safe to just replace it. And it actually does not look like they sent me a spring. So I will be reusing the old spring here. Okay, so to start with, I'll put the spring in this little hole here. Hopefully my rather large fingers can do this. Yeah, good grief. It's always the hard part. There. Now, having seen me struggle with this, you might not want to do it because you might think you can't. Well, it's the sort of thing where you have to keep at it till it works. It's not easy, that's for sure. It sure isn't easy. But if you keep at it a while, generally you will figure out the magic combination of things to do to get it in there. What I was doing was I slid the tiny little needle down there into its hole and then held the spring in its hole while pushing down this lever here with this tube inside the lever onto the spring to hold the spring in place. And then once I had it holding the spring down so the spring couldn't fall out of the hole anymore, I slid it backwards onto the needle so that now it pulls the needle up. And that's how I had to do it. You can figure out the way that works best for you, but that seems to work here. Now let's see. You want to match up the gaskets, make sure you're using the right gasket in the right place. Interestingly enough, this gasket looks a little different than my original one. However, that's not a problem, because it fits in the same. The only difference is the original one has a cutout in between the 2 holes. This one, solid, almost solid. You also want to get the right layering of gaskets on there. This gasket here went on before the pump diaphragm. You don't want to put the diaphragm on and then the gasket on top of it. You can tell because these are stuck together, the original ones are stuck together. So they didn't come apart when I took them apart. And this part of the diaphragm, the part with the holes in it, looks like the top of salt and pepper shaker or whatever, that part always points inwards. What am I doing here? I need to replace this Welch plug. So, okay, so I'm gonna drill a small hole in this plug here, because that's the only way to get these out. That's why you need the kit before you do this. And I'm not sure that there's something behind there plugging it up, but since I've got the kit and I've got a replacement plug, I want to make sure I replace what I can. And one thing you definitely don't want to do is do this too quickly. If you go through there, you could damage all the fuel jets. And these Welch plugs are made out of very soft metal, so if in doubt, drill slower, in other words. And it would also be ideal to use a smaller bit than this, but I could not find one really quick here, so I decided to be more careful and use a smaller bit, or a bigger bit. Okay. Now that I got it drilled through, stick a tiny screwdriver in there and try to pop it up and out of the hole. It's not easy to do. There we go. And you will notice I didn't quite drill all the way through it because my drill bit was so big. I didn't want to risk damaging anything on the other side. Okay, so all those tiny little holes in there under the Welch plug, they're clean, but I'm going to blow them out with my air compressor anyway, just for safety's sake. I'd much rather be safe than sorry in an instance like this. Okay, I did a quick blowout with the air compressor. Now, I'm going to put in the new Welch plug. Let's see. The new one is a slightly different shape, which is fine. So long as it goes in there, snaps in place, it's fine. You can tap on it with a piece of plastic if you wanted to make sure it gets in there. I'm pretty sure placing it rounded side out, pointing out, is proper, because it won't fit in any other way. So, let's see now, back to fuel pump diaphragm gaskets, and putting this all back together so that I can go to the other side and do gaskets on the other side. Okay, so now for the top side with the primer. Naturally, there will be more gaskets and diaphragms under here. Okay, so you see right here, it's split here instead of it splitting at the bubble primer, so I'll get to the bubble primer later. Take these screws, set them aside. Now, you got to keep the order here carefully so that you don't make a mistake. Lay them face down, pull them off, face down. So with everything face down is the proper direction for these to go on, so like that. So the more clear gasket goes first, and then that one goes on top of it. So you simply find the proper one in there. I think that, yes, that is it. And then the one that goes with it. Yep. Yeah, there we go. It lines up perfect. Okay, so we remember that this one went on the bottom first. Or it went on first, which would be the bottom. So it goes up against here, like that. Pretty clean. Now I'm going to take this little filter screen out here with my screwdriver. See if this thing came with a replacement. It did. So replace it. And I'm going to obviously keep all these gaskets and filters and diaphragms and everything from this for the future. If I ever need to rebuild something and I don't want to go purchase a kit, and there's a gasket from this that was good that I can just reuse, I will. So don't throw any of this away, in other words. Now I'm going to try to pop these apart. There we go. So, I don't actually see a seal in there at all. It just looks like the bubble seals it off. I don't see a replacement valve here either for in the new one. Strange. I'm going to carefully look under this thing. Yeah. So there's no replacement for that valve there, so I'm not going to even try to replace it. Which is strange, because I kind of thought there was supposed to be a gasket between these pieces, but I guess not, since it didn't come with anything for that. Okay, well, then I suppose, since there's no more parts of this that come apart at all, I'll just put together what I've got. I'm going to turn this screw out so I have an easier time putting this back on. Won't be pushing on the idle adjustment. There we go. And there's always manuals for these you can find, these carburetors. Looking online you can probably find quite a few of them, and if you do try to replace something and you don't do it right and you need help to get it back to the proper way, you can always look online at manuals, or there could be more rebuild videos than just my one. There. Well, I suppose that's just about that for all the parts I can actually open on this carburetor. There's all these extra pieces here because this kit is made for servicing multiple different kinds of carburetors, so since you've seen the carburetor go back on this before in an earlier clip, let's just skip that and get right to testing it. Well, that certainly didn't do it. $10 trillion pulls later. Alrighty guys, so I figured something out. When trying to run it, my Welch plug kept popping out, getting underneath the fuel pump diaphragm, and it wouldn't pump fuel. I didn't actually know what was going on, so I took it apart and found the Welch plug out multiple times. So I did a little research, and it turns out there's an extra step I didn't know about when installing Welch plugs. You actually, to get them installed, have to kind of flatten them out a little bit so that they'll stay in the hole. Because when you hit them with a hammer and a punch like this, or this is actually a little pin, but when you hit them on the top and they flatten out a little bit, they expand slightly and just fill the hole and stay in place. I actually didn't know that before. This is only the second time I've tried to replace Welch plugs. It also explains why the last thing I tried to replace Welch plugs on wasn't running very well. So I got this little heavy ratchet end here, and I'm going to see if I can tap that flat. Well, it would appear I did a little better than that. Got a little dent in it, but at least now it's going to stay in place. So I'm going to try putting this back on the weed eater. See if it'll actually run this time. Okay, so here's the moment of truth. Will it run? Okay, so it's running now, which is an improvement over before. Let's see, gonna turn the high speed adjustment in a little bit because it was obviously running quite a bit rich on the top end. Well, I would say it's running now.
Make sure to like and leave a comment, and if you're new, subscribe.